You gotta behave.
Obey the rules.
Welcome, everyone, to the April 18th, 2018 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are wrapping up our meetings with department heads tonight. We have our final two departments here. We have budgets to go over with them, so without further ado, we will bring Dan was first on the list, so
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
let Tom go before you. All right, we'll have Tom McCarthy from the Veterans Department.
Nice and quick and sweet.
We like nice and quick, and
There you go. Yeah, we're going level spending on my budget this year. I've got plenty of money in the budget, so. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom McCarthy. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for Abington and Whitman. I was officially given the title in July. I've been on 3 years now, working at Whitman until a year ago, January, when I go back to school. I've taken over his position. As far as my budget goes, I've been over my budget thoroughly, and if we go level spending, I don't see any issues with that. And of course, my Chapter 115 expenditures, we get that reimbursed at 75% from the state. So if I do my work right, we get every penny. I do have a new hire on. She's working part-time, Jackie Figgins from Whitman. She's our new part-time. She's working tonight, or she'd be here. She works 3 days a week over at Good Samaritan Hospital, mostly in the ER doing x-rays. But she's been on since the first week of December, and she's doing really well. She passed all her courses for the state certification. Without that, our town would only get reimbursed at 50% instead of the 75%. So I got her right on that, and she's passed her certification.
excellent.
And a week ago, she started taking over the Abington office Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays. And right now, I have her just doing our Chapter 115 work. I don't want to throw the VA stuff, which is very complicated, at her now until I know she's 100%.
Nice. Sounds good.
So,
So, I think we don't have much line by line.
Page?
right.
45.
Thanks.
Does anyone have specific questions? I believe all of the amounts stayed flat. It's hard. It's a little hard for those of the new people this year. It's a little hard to estimate what the needs for the Veterans Department
Right,
are going
it
to be.
fluctuates so
They fluctuate
much,
year
yeah.
to year. They fluctuate based on who lives in the town at the time
Right.
and what they qualify for
Sure.
and things. The state.
My goal as a veterans agent for the town is to put them on the best benefit that's going to give them the best quality of life, and Chapter 115 is not the answer to that. Anybody who is eligible for Social Security, by law, I force them to apply for it, or Social Security disability, and if it's neither of the two and they have a service-connected disability, I do all their paperwork and file their VA claims. In 3 years, I'm up to about 800 claims that I've filed. That's more than the city of Brockton in 10 years with a staff of 7. So I do a lot of work with VA claims to give people a better quality of life, better treatment programs and things like that. Quality of life is the biggest issue. And that saves the town money in the long run, too. And it's more money they're spending on taxable goods and services within the town.
And also for those that are newer and don't know, was it 3 years ago that we partnered between Abington and Whitman?
4 years ago.
4 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, we became a
combined,
district.
Became a district. Both towns were a little bit struggling to take care of everything themselves.
Right.
And we decided to join forces, and it's been very
We
good.
end up with more
Very good
coverage
so far.
all the time this way. When the phone rings, generally there's somebody there to answer it, just about every single time it rings. And we do go to all our training, mandatory training sessions. We have a week-long one in Leominster every October. That's where all our certifications are done annually for service officers training. You get certified to write VA claims as a state service officer. And they stay on top of that stuff in there, making sure that we know that what certifications we need each year.
And you said we get paid back or credited 75%?
Only on one of the line items, the Veterans Aid budget. That is considered a Chapter 115 support system for veterans who don't have any funds to live on. And if we do our job correctly, we get 75% of every penny we spend back to the town.
Sure.
And we get that once a year.
That's a pretty big one, so that's good.
Yeah, that's the biggest expenditure that we have. There's no cost to us to write VA claims, so there's no expense there. And we are bringing on some software to expedite the process of writing VA claims. It's called Vetrospect. It's been used around the state for about 2 years. And what that does, if there's one form, the basic form that I fill out on every benefit for the VA, if there are other forms that need to be generated for that particular type of disability, they auto-fill all the demographics on the form, and I type in the particulars, and I can actually follow the claim to reassure the veteran that their claim is being processed thoroughly.
So on that line item, where does it show that we ever do get the credit back? Meaning, like, you might not even have what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, it does not show on that. That's the budgeted,
Shows
figure.
money out.
Yep.
Not the.
Yeah, not
okay.
what's coming back to
Sure.
us.
And that will come back in the revenue.
And then we
side.
use that for the following year to fund the budget.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've been doing pretty good. Don't have very much at all that's been denied by Boston, and generally I can get the month reopened so that I can go ahead and add what documentation they're looking for. We've had a lot of changes in Boston. The supervisors that look at all the 115 claims before they're approved, and they have different opinions on what they need under 108, Chapter 115 state law. I mean, the law's pretty clear, and I would argue the point if I feel they're wrong, and make sure that the documentation is in there so that we get all our money back.
Do you know, or at least have ballpark, how many veterans we have?
Right now, I have 26 Chapter 115 claims in Abington. The expenditure each month is running about $12,000 a month. So you can see they really don't get a lot of money through that program. That's including we reimburse them for prescriptions when they qualify for the program. We also pay their healthcare premiums. And I shop around myself and suggest like a supplemental plan to their Part B Medicare plan, which covers quite a bit that we won't have to reimburse them for over the year. So it keeps our budget down.
Any other questions? Peter?
I've been led to understand that other towns might come in with your group. Is that
You know,
Anything going with that?
Hanson showed interest in coming into our group, but both the town manager and the town administrator in Whitman weren't interested in that because they've had some problems in that department in the past, and we'd be taking on issues, inheriting issues from the past, and it wasn't worth it to us. Hanover refused to do it as well for the same reasons. So they went and they just hired somebody that actually calls almost every day for information on how to do his job.
so? Why doesn't the state just do this job that?
It would be nice if where the state mandates this
Yes.
position in every city and town in the state of Massachusetts. but they don't pay any portion of the salaries or the operating budgets. They only reimburse for the Chapter 115, which no other state in the country has. The veterans support system that we have in Massachusetts. We have a history of veterans moving to Massachusetts for this program. I had one move from South Carolina, was living in his car with his wife and 2 kids. Nobody took the time to write his VA claim. He ended up at 100%, moved back to South Carolina, and built a brand new home. So, and there's a lot of success with the programs that the state of Massachusetts offers veterans. A lot of really great programs, like the home-based program is kind of the model for the rest of the country, actually the rest of the world now. As far as a full package treatment program for veterans, their families, with educational programs. They do trips where they take families away on camping trips and everything else. So there's a great support system in there. I mean, they cover everything from traumatic brain injury, PTSD, physical injuries, loss of limbs. They cover the whole gamut of it and how it affects everybody in a family. It's not just the veteran, it's the family that suffers when they come home wounded as well. We are getting some younger veterans into the program now, where it has been for the longest time. World War II, Korean War veterans, Vietnam veterans. I have quite a few Vietnam veterans. The majority of our clients in Chapter 115 are widows of veterans. So we take care of them pretty well. You know, I go out and do home visits if I feel that there's a need for that. If I feel that they don't understand what the program does for them, I'll go out and visit with them. You know, and we've been holding a monthly. It started out as a veterans breakfast over at the senior center every month. We had one today. We third Wednesday of every month, and we opened it up to the community. So now we have our senior veterans and seniors from town that are out doing things together. We had 50 leave on a bus trip down to Twin Rivers today.
That's great.
Tell them tie their shoes tight, because that might be all they come home with. The Colony Nursing Home, right up on Route 18, funds through their Veterans Hospice Program. They fund the food end of it, and Dunkin' Donuts on 123 donates the coffee every month. So it costs the town nothing to get out there and give people advice and steer them in the right direction. And we do have people that attend from other towns that want veterans benefits here in town, and we're restricted to our town because it comes out of our budget. The same way with VA claims. I have a lot of calls from out of town because of my reputation doing claims, and I refer them right back to their town. This town pays my salary between Abington and Whitman, so they're the veterans that I pay attention to. And I can advise them if they're not getting the services in their town, who to call, which is usually 600 Washington, our director's office. And they'll squirm away. Okay, we have about the same number of monthly claims. They've been staying pretty close to the same. In Whitman, I was up to 38 claims at one point, and my average expenditure per month in Whitman is about $18,000. I've just got to look at my budget for next year. I've got $210,000 to fund the Chapter 115 portion of my budget. Last year, I had $200,000, and I only spent 93% of that budget. So. And again, that's by putting people on other programs that are more lucrative to them and better quality of life.
Money that's not spent, where does it go? Back into
the general.
It goes back to the free cash, the
Yep.
general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You do
Yes.
a great job, and I know my
Absolutely.
family has benefited from your services, so we've been very grateful for you and your role. So you're a great
Thank
asset
you.
to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I grew up in this town. I love this town. Unfortunately, I'm moving to Halifax. I just bought a house Sunday in Halifax. I'm looking at retirement in 5 years.
Good for you.
Wow, excellent.
I retired in '06 from the Marine Corps, and
Yeah.
Thank you for your service
yeah,
again.
my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions?
Thanks.
Absolutely. Dan? Absolutely. You're up next.
Next.
Next item up for bids.
Good evening to all.
Good evening.
For the new people, Dan Callahan, the water superintendent of the Joint Water Works. Joe Lapointe is the assistant superintendent.
39?
39?
39.
My budget is pretty straightforward. I'll start off what I do every year. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what I'm gonna spend next year. There's only estimates. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I've never exceeded a budget, so I'll put my, take my hat off to that.
Good track record.
Yeah. Yep. I did decrease the salary and wages, which is basically police details for if we get a water main break or something like that. We've been on top of our water main breaks, and we've been upgrading our system, and fortunately, I think I can get by with the 5,000 as opposed to 10, and that's just for details out on the street during the breaks. The biggest increase in my budget, everything else is, stays the same. Level funding, that was the word I was looking for. Until we get down to the intermunicipal, and that basically is the joint waterworks. Abington owns their water mains, Abington owns their meters, same way with Rockland. But then when we get into all the personnel work for the joint, all the treatment comes from the joint, running the 3 treatment plants is all part of the joint. Every year, I do look at my previous year's water usage to be fair to the, each town. This year, Abington used 1% more than they did last year, so instead of paying 46% of the joint budget, they're gonna pay 47%, and Rockland will pay the other 53. Last year, it was 54-46, this year it's 53-47, and that fluctuates depending on what year, what we've had from the previous year. The joint budget, the only thing that went up in the joint budget is salaries, and that's all contractual. So that's pretty straightforward, and because the salaries went up, we also, and your percentage went up, there was a $69,000 increase in the joint line item from last year to this year. And then my final item is my debt services, and those are just, they're etched in stone. As you know, we've done a lot of work the last couple of years, $3 million worth of bonds. Well, this is our first year, we have to start paying them back. Some bonds are going down. I believe the bond for Washington Street will probably be, oh, not Washington Street, the building that we're in now will be coming off the books next year. So we try to keep it pretty basic. Bond issues went up this year by 46,000, that's because I added 3 million in notes. So the bottom line is the entire Abington budget went up by $110,000. And we project that we will be able to fund it without raising the rates this year.
Can I ask a question? This says intermunicipal charges 2.2 million and then requested 1.9 million.
Yeah, I feel like
So
this
that's
is,
going down.
I
not
feel like
up,
this
right?
is wrong.
I'm
I
like,
think
am I
this is
reading
wrong.
backwards?
It looks like your budget's way less, so this
Yeah.
isn't right.
Yeah.
Not what we have, not.
I'm glad you
not-
said
we're
something,
looking at.
because I
It's
didn't,
not-
I didn't
I'm
want to
so
say
confused.
anything.
He's like, our budget went up. I'm like, no, your budget went way down. I was like, good
That's why
job.
We're gonna bring in Sue Oakland.
Yeah, it
for
makes
that,
no
'cause
sense.
some of the numbers.
Yeah,
on
like
the-
you're
Okay,
down
my
like
budget
3,000.
lost,
And you're-
printouts.
my FY 18 budget was 2,691.
That's the salary and stuff.
Yeah.
And my FY 19 budget is 2,801. Now, are you looking at 2.6?
No.
Oh, this, they said you were 3.4 million last year.
Yeah.
We've gone through this a couple
Oh,
of
you
times,
know
and
what
I
it
always
is?
get confused.
That's because all of the ATM articles are in there. So anything under the 2.2 million, all of those are additional ATM articles. And
Yeah.
it adds it to the budget, but it's not actually part of the.
Those are fixed
I
articles.
think the question
No,
that people
but-
had
No,
was,
it's
if you see the
intermunicipal charges
intermunicipal
budget is
2.2,
down.
and then the requested is
Is
1.9.
1.9.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's-
make sense.
that-
You're
that
saying it
one.
So
went
that's
up.
what's confusing.
Right here.
Remember we
Plus,
did?
like, this went down,
Oh, yeah.
everything went down.
Okay,
Like,
go
everything.
ahead. What were you just
No,
gonna do?
I was gonna give him his book back.
Oh, go ahead. The,
Thanks.
1.9 is this year's budget, proposed budget for the intermunicipal. The 2.1 is a little confusing because it was me, but when I put together my FY '18 budget, I put the wrong numbers in. I basically flatlined it from 2017, and then it went up. The figure I had in was the 2.1, that was okay, but my entire budget was cheaper. And it worked out this year because the bond was pushed back by another year of $150,000 that I would have been paying this year. That got pushed back. We never had the bond funding this year, so I had 150 to play with. I was anticipating to come back to the special town meeting and ask for that 150 that was not allocated last year because of the wrong numbers I put in. As it turned out, I didn't need the money. So the number of the 2.1 that you're seeing in there really was a fictitious number from last year because it never happened. Is
The
that
two
correct,
point,
Sheila?
the 2.2?
The 2.2?
Yep.
So the 1.9 is the
The
real.
1.9 is
1.9
the
is
actual.
correct.
This year's 1.9 for joint waterworks is correct.
Okay.
And then your total budget is 2.7.
My total budget is my total budget is 2.8. And I'm just double checking that the 1.9 is correct. It is.
I know we're all getting used to the new system,
Yeah, I
so
think
I
the
just wanted to make sure we were following
2.7
correctly.
versus the 2.8 might be
Rounding out.
Just rounding up versus.
Yep.
either rounding out.
Well,
or
I
it
don't think
might
we
be-
round up by 100,000.
We also
This
don't
is
have the
still-
new one.
Yeah.
This, we might not have known about the 1% when we first got this printed.
Yeah, because there's that new budget.
Yeah.
Unless you want to round it up by 100,000, that's okay with me. But yes, what I'm looking for is 2.8, and every year I always put in a little bit of a cushion. I haven't had to use it yet, but under that 2.8, I am looking to transfer 200,000 out of the undesignated fund balance, if need be, because my receipts might be around 2.6, but every year they're up there, so.
Can you explain that one thing just one more time? The last thing you just said.
Yeah, I have a budget, a proposed budget of 2.8.
Yep, but you said 200,000 for,
And I am looking to pay 2.6 from receipts,
Like
And
us
I-
paying our water.
I
paying
got
your
you.
water bill,
Everybody pays
and
it.
transfer 200,000 out of the undesignated fund balance,
Yep.
which will give me the 2.8 to spend. Over the years, I can either, it might work, well, this year was 150,000 less, but that was a mistake. It's not gonna be 150,000 less next year. And, you know, receipts, maybe the receipts come in 50,000 short. I gotta take 50 out of that 200, but I've never used, as a matter of fact, in the 4 or 5 years I've been putting in, I haven't used a penny out of it. But I don't wanna get cocky.
And the money that you don't use goes back to the undesignated.
Undesignated fund balance, yes.
So the water department has an undesignated fund, that the money they don't use goes back to that rather than going
Yep.
to
free cash.
the free cash in the general fund,
Yep.
because the money for the department comes in from the receipts of
Yep.
you paying your water bill.
Yep.
It's separate than your tax bill, which goes to the regular.
Sure.
fund.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's not as straightforward as many of the other departments that we see, but it's generally fairly self-funding, and you guys do a very good job with the.
We are self-funding because, well, I don't think the town has ever subsidized the water department since they've been the joint waterworks, 1884.
Can I ask a question, kind of off topic, but last year when you were here, you said you were replacing water mains in the town?
Yes,
Can you just, so you just did Thicket Street, Wyman Road, right, was last summer? And was that the last phase, or is there another phase left?
we, yeah, go ahead,
That's the
Jimmy.
last phase.
Okay.
The only we got left is paving, which
Okay.
still is under that contract. but
Right.
Everything's gonna sit a year.
Right, I remember you saying that last
All the
year.
main lines in.
Okay.
What we're gonna do on that project.
Right,
And the,
just
intent-
curious, just
Yeah.
more curiosity.
Wyman.
I remember last year you said the plan, and I couldn't remember if that was the last phase or if
Did,
there was one more.
Temple, Wyman, Greenwood, Summit, part of Old Randolph, Thicket Street to the Weymouth line, and then Jamison and Extra.
Right,
it was a pretty good portion. And then we look
I don't
at
know any-
we look at different things every year, you know, like, all right, maybe the bond is coming off for the building that we took out 10 years ago. Maybe Washington Street is getting paid up. As money frees up, then we look at taking another bond, because we try to keep our payments around the same every year. But right now, we're pretty maxed out for taking out a bond for water mains. We'll sit back a couple of years and look at it and stuff.
I will say, typically, each year when we have you in, there are always a spate of complaints about the water, especially around flushing of the system. I don't know about anybody else, but
I've never
I
had
haven't
any
heard
problems.
any this year.
No, I haven't read about all the
Wow.
posts and
So-
the, yeah, no, I.
Thank the assistant superintendent.
Oak Street too.
Yeah,
That
Oak
all
Street,
came from
So-
Oak Street, so we replaced that main as part of this contract, because we had a little money extra.
yeah. And
So it
we're
seems
out
like,
there flushing
seems
right
like
now.
the people are happier this year, so.
The, with the Route 18 project going on, we have 2 water mains on Route 18. The state's gonna pay to eliminate the older one and put everything on the newer one.
Oh, nice.
Free of
That's good.
charge.
Works
Yeah,
out pretty
that's
well
great.
for us.
Whenever that gets.
Yeah,
Warrant articles.
there are a lot of them. So I will go through them very quickly, because most of them are straightforward.
So that everyone, or especially the newer people know, the water department typically has a good list of warrant articles for things to be.
I'm sorry?
approved.
No, I don't. I thought they were,
Email me some tomorrow.
no.
Can I ask you a question? Just, we get these little notes in the mail that say like the water is not good or whatever. I didn't
That's what we were
remember.
just talking about, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't gotten those in a couple of years.
You haven't received one of those in 5 years?
Well,
no.
that's not
4
true
years ago,
because
'cause I remember I was
Okay,
pregnant.
4, okay.
But I remember I was pregnant at the time, my daughter
It
will be
happened
4.
5 years ago, and then we had to follow up, and it was
Yes.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
and that's-
What,
I
what,
actually
what
haven't
was
gotten
that for? That's my question of like, what triggers that to happen?
What basically, what really happened there was they changed the laws for monitoring water. It all came from Myers Ave. Myers Ave is groundwater, and you put your chlorine in first. The water comes out of the ground, you put chlorine in, try to purify it. The chlorine reacts with the inorganic particles and creates trihalomethanes and haloacidic acids. They get out into the system. It came in 2 parts. Number one, they changed the law that you had, and both laws come out at the same time. You had to meet what they call CT, contact time. You had to have the chlorine in contact for a certain period of time before you release the water into the system. In order to meet that, we had to up our pre-chlorine. When we upped our pre-chlorine, it increased the THMs and the HA5s, haloacidic and trihalomethanes. And that was okay. Until then they changed the second law. We used to be able to take the whole system, take an average and say, okay, you know, the THM limit is 0.8, we're down at 0.6 when you average all your samples. Well, they changed the law and you had to go site-specific. So now
Okay.
your site might have been 0.9, your site might have been 0.6, yours might have been 0.5, we were meeting the average. So they changed both rules at the same time, we were in violation. So what we wound up doing was putting a larger main out in the parking lot of Myers Ave so we could get more contact time, and did away with the pre-chlorination. Once we did away with the pre-chlorination, all the byproducts went away. So
Good explanation.
I made the whole thing up, but
Sounded very technical.
all right, the first article is in the special. And it's for $125,000 with a like amount from the town of Rockland. And that's to do the engineering of Myers Ave upgrade. I am only pumping .25 or 250,000 gallons a day out of Myers Ave. We are registered for 420,000 gallons a day. So there's 170,000 I'm not using. It's about a $1.5 million project to revamp the plant so I can use everything. We put in for a grant last year from Mass Grant, and we did not get it for 1.5. And they said the reason you didn't get it is you are not shovel-ready. You have to have at least 25% of your design done. So this 250, 125 from each town will pay to have the design done. And if they're true to their word and I get the design done, then we're gonna get a $1.5 million grant to do the upgrades. And the other news with this one, this is a no-brainer because we just met with them today. There's a mass housing grant that's out there right now that would give us $150,000, 75 for each town towards this 250. So we can almost get the design paid for too with grants.
Great.
Now,
Just quick, so we have a system that can pump 400,000, right?
we're approved
Oh,
for 400, they
cannot.
cannot.
All right, I got
Need
you.
to upgrade it.
We need to upgrade the system.
I thought you said it was, and then somebody else just had to sign off on it. I get what you're saying.
Approved to be up to 400.
Right,
It's not capable of that,
Gotcha.
perfect,
so.
The next article is a $30,000, and other than well, actually even that, all of this money is transferred from undesignated fund balance. There was no borrowing articles this year. $30,000 for the first year payment on a 5-year lease-to-own backhoe. And that's to replace the 1999 backhoe that's been beat up over the years. So
Sorry, is that one annual or special?
the only annual was the 125,
Okay.
everything else is special. So that's a 30,000,
Other way, 125 is
Correct.
special, the rest are
Correct.
annual.
we're all special. 30,000 in the annual, it's a 5-year lease, we'll pay 150 for the backhoe over the 5 years, but it's a lease to own. Next item is an annual item, $15,000 for cross-connection testing. We're required by law to go into all the businesses and test their devices so when we get a water main break, unfortunately, we're not sucking any kind of chemicals or anything out of their building we're required by law to do it. We do it as an article because I don't want to put it in, if we charge for the inspections and everything. I do not want to put it into the budget. And then, and then have to raise the rates because it's in there. This has been 20 years in there. It's an annual $15,000.
Dan, what was that for, basically?
Cross-connection testing and inspections.
Thank you.
How's that?
Yep.
Next item is $130,000 with a like amount from the town of Rockland. And that is to replace the filter media and rebuild the filters at Hannigan, Myers, and the Myers Ave water treatment plant. Basically, we started the project last year. We did 2 filters at Myers Ave. This will finish Myers Ave, bring it right up to snuff. We did 1 filter at Sandy Bottom. There's another article. That'll bring Sandy Bottom up to snuff. And Hannigan only has 1 filter. That'll bring Hannigan. So all our filters will be all right up to. So that's 130 from each town. 30,000 from each town to replace the antiquated heating and ventilation system at the Hingham Street Water Treatment Plant. You're in a treatment plant, you need heat in the winter and you need air conditioning in the summer. Next article is $25,000 for the purpose of purchasing water hydrants. We do this annually. We put a budget in to buy hydrants and replace them around town as need be. As Joe alluded to earlier, we've got the state to agree to do all the services and get rid of the old main. Part of our agreement, what do you got, like 5 hydrants or something? Or we have to give them the 5 hydrants. Well, I'll do that.
Seems like a good deal.
Yes. $50,000 to purchase water meters.
What was that? I'm sorry.
25,000 for hydrants. 50. Do you want me to take notes for you, Jeb? or- 50,000 for the purchasing water meters. That's an annual item. We purchase our meters every year. You got to turn them over every 10 years.
Why wouldn't that one be in the regular budget, right? If it's something that happens every single year?
It's just part of, it's always been an article and stuff, and the budgets are more for operating. That's not an operating expense. That's a, capital. So capital is usually articles.
So it's similar to the article that the police do for cruisers. There's always debate as to whether that should be capital or it should be part of the budget, because you always know that that's going to come up as a need, but how it gets funded, it's sort of a bookkeeping thing.
And truthfully, I would rather take 50,000 out of the undesignated fund balance than to put it into my budget and then have to raise the rates to meet my budget. If we have a bad year and I don't have the 50,000, maybe that year we're gonna have to sit on the meters, but it's been working pretty well.
So is it approximately every 10 years that they're all?
It should be, yes.
So throughout the whole town, they do about 10% each year. And so, like Dan was saying, if they have a year where the money is low and we don't replace the 10% that year, we'll skip that year and save the money instead of having to appropriate it for the budget, raise the rates, so.
The next article is 100,000 from each town, and that's to redesign our effluent. We have problems with, when you make water, you have to add chemicals, or when you take surface water, you have to add chemicals, and then the chemicals settle out, creates flock, and it goes into the sedimentation basin, gets pumped out into the lagoons. Well, over the years, they've changed design. We now have lined lagoons in Pembroke, which we never used to have. We have to pump them out more frequently, so we're looking at a different way of separating the effluent, so that, such as we would take the effluent from the filter and pump it out. Well, the first thing you do, you add the chemicals, it goes into the flocculation basin, then it goes into the filter. Well, right now it's set up that the filter backwash and the flocculation backwash all go out into the lagoons. Flocculation backwash is probably about 80% thicker than the filter backwash. So we're looking at redesigning it so that the filter backwash goes right out into the head of the plant. It comes back in. And then the only thing going out into lagoons is the sedimentation backwash. And at Hannigan, we're looking at, we had nice lagoons up back, but the pumps are undersized to get the stuff up there. We're looking at increasing the pumps up there, so that's 100,000 from each town to get that project going.
Is that simply the design phase of the
No,
project?
no,
or
that's
is
the,
that
that's
the project.
project.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would imagine we expect that that will help with future maintenance and efficiency.
Yes, it
of the
will
system.
help with the efficiency because we won't have to pump the lagoons as frequently. The next article is 85,000 from each town to upgrade the finished water pump at Hannigan, as well as the chemical feed pumps at Great Sandy Bottom and Hannigan. We're basically getting all these plants right up to snuff, so we can sit back. No water mains this year, no plant construction this year. Sit back and have a drink and say, hey, we're doing a hell of a job. And the final article is $35,000 for a pickup truck to replace the 2007 F-150.
On the backhoe and the truck, what happens to those?
They go back to auction like,
And do we end up getting the money? Or does it go to
oh, no.
state or something?
Backhoe, they offer us, they'll give us money for a trade.
Trade-in.
Yep.
To take it off the base price. Usually our trucks, they go to surplus, they end up going to the highway department.
Yep.
And actually, they've been utilizing our older trucks. And then
Sure.
when they'll take one of theirs and it goes to auction. And then that money goes back into the general fund.
Yeah. And we've worked pretty well with the highway as far as they take some of our older vehicles, as Joe just said. But they've also worked with us on that, the MEMA truck we got, that basically we weren't eligible for it, but the highway was, so they worked the MEMA truck into our work, and now it's a big work truck we use on water main breaks and stuff like that. And believe it or not, that's everything.
And for the backhoe one, could you look at like a a 1 year, you know what I mean? Just because the first year is usually a pretty good punch in the gut when it comes to the cost of a big equipment. Would it be possible to look at maybe a 1 year-ish used one? Just because just because of the such large number that it will come down that first year.
The backhoe, the price of the backhoes come off a state bid.
Yep.
It all goes to auction. Are you talking about like a used?
Sorry, a new one. Sorry, so like buying a new one, because we're gonna buy a new one, right? Or
Yeah.
want to. So instead of buying a new one for 150, could we get, I'm completely making it up, 2 for 150 that are a year old? Or something like that? Does anyone ever look at that, or are they just saying we just want to know?
I don't think they leased one like that. Truthfully, no, we haven't looked at that,
Yep.
but, you know, if you're gonna go and do it, you're better off going new. I mean, you don't know what the maintenance, I mean, usually if it's a year old, they've repossessed it. The guy hasn't paid his bills on it. You know what I mean? So he probably hasn't kept it maintenance or anything.
Sure.
And the other
But we
part,
did this with our other the one we just got, in '99, we did a 5-year lease, and then it's ours, so we haven't paid anything since 2004.
yeah. Other than the main,
14
Other
years.
than the maintenance.
yeah.
So it's really not a
And does
lease,
that-
it's more of a buy, right? Like
It's a
a-
buy,
Yeah.
lease to own.
Lease
Yeah,
to
we
Yeah.
leased it for 5 years.
Then we own it.
After the 5 years, it's yours, with no extra cost right now. In other words, they're financing for us for 5
Yeah,
years.
sure.
And the highway department maintains those too, or do you have a contract?
Yes. We pay the,
You pay the highway department, yeah.
Yeah.
I just meant an outside vendor contract versus the highway department.
No, we usually, the highway department's pretty up on
Yeah,
that.
everyone's
Yeah.
sung their praises this year, so
Absolutely.
Yep.
pretty amazing to
I
have.
mean, we're really not part of the DPW, so
Right.
they can say,
Yeah,
have
beat
CAP
it.
do it, and it costs us 10 times. as
Right,
much.
right. That's what I was wondering if it was. That's great.
Nope, we've always had a great relationship.
They do a good job over there.
Yes, yep.
Anyone have other questions?
My questions are answered, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
I
you so much
appreciate
for your
everything.
time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Deb, I'll get you that stuff tomorrow, the articles.
Sue, you have anything for us? Does anyone have questions on the budget documents that we got this week? This week / late last week?
I actually have I think this is probably, so for school committee, when they came last week and we were talking about full day kindergarten,
Yes.
and it was originally, like, when we voted on it, it was to provide, obviously a new school, provide more room, so that we could have all-day kindergarten. How come the school building committee couldn't provide some of that seed money, since it was kind of under the impression that that was bringing the full-time kindergarten? They have $2.2 million they haven't spent. We've already taken the loan out. Why can't we use some of that? I mean, I know it's not building, but it was to build the program.
It's to build. It's to build
But
and
the
equip.
laptops aren't built. I
And
mean,
the
So
money,
it's-
the money is fenced.
but we were using it for building a new program, so you can't fall under that.
The way that, because about 55% or so
Yes.
of the project
And
is
here-
funded by
Right.
by the state, there are specific rules of what you can do with the money
Okay,
that
so you
is
can't
allocated
use
for the
them.
program. Equipping the school, maintenance things for the
Okay.
school, the actual building, fields, those kind of things are okay. Salaries are not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we would
So
love
the
to be
full-day
able to
kindergarten would be
toss-
salaries, I
toss
guess,
that in
yeah.
and-
Okay.
and pay
For
the
capital
startup
costs.
cost for this, but unfortunately, they don't qualify for what we can spend that money towards.
And when's the end of that? The end of, meaning like,
The new school
on,
project.
yeah, just
When the
like,
project's done. When will that be? Another 2 or 3 years at least. Because the fields out there have to be resodded, and the town or the school department won't accept receipt of the fields until they are growing grass and they're healthy. That's part of the contract.
yeah.
So it's gonna be a while. I mean, it's gonna be knit and away stuff that's hanging on, but the vast majority of everything is pretty much done now. The only issues are the field. Some of the flooring has to be redone. They're working on that.
Some of the flooring at the new school needs to be redone?
Yes.
Why?
Because it was not correctly laid, yeah. And again, we're aggressively going after the flooring contractor. In fact, we've gone after their insurer. So it's being dealt with very aggressively by our team. The laptops and that's pretty much it. Oh, and some more lockers being put in. But, it's just nitnoid stuff that's,
So
But
it looks like we'll be under that by a good chunk.
Is that anyone's goal, is to not spend all that money? Yeah, I mean.
the goal was
the
to
goal is
get
I mean,
it done.
obviously, I have young kids, I want a nice school, but at the same time, do we have to spend every last penny?
No.
Is there any, you know what I mean? Is there a goal of to not spend every last penny unless necessary?
The goal is
I
to
guess
build
is
the
what
school per the contract. And again, the budget was laid out with overruns possibly happening in mind, because when they were digging out all the boulders and all the other stuff,
right,
they had no idea what was going
Right.
to be there.
I think basically what the general sense is, as the liaison, I think the committee is asking you to make it known to the rest of the school building committee that in general, we would like to not spend all of
Right.
the money, any money that we can.
Right.
Avoid spending on that would be great.
Spend it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're already
Which,
built
that's one
out
thing
to
that they
2041,
have-
if we could make it
They have
2038,
done a
that
very
would be
good
nice.
job
Right.
of spending it well, spending it wisely, to the point where they are under budget. so.
Right. And there've been all kinds of different ideas that have come and gone, and the whole idea of, is it really cost effective, has always been in the forefront. And there've been a lot of things that were thrown out because it wasn't.
And I think on if we're looking at equipment and stuff like that, somebody should be looking at buying a one-year use thing. Again, I'm not in the market. I know a couple people that do. It's a huge difference. I don't know if every single one-year-old thing is repoed, but it's an incredible amount of savings. The reason I'm even saying is if somebody puts out a warrant for $150,000 and can get a warrant for get something for 100 and then get something else for 50.
But you don't have warranties and so forth.
What is it?
Warranties?
You still can. Like Milton Cat, it's a big company. They sell one-year used things. They're out there. My point is, we shouldn't, in a lot of aspects, act like a Hingham. I don't want to be a Hingham. Act like a lesser, or whatever, maybe not a lesser, maybe bad word. Act like a town that doesn't have as much money, and that's how I'd rather act. So the reason that I even bring up the thing is because they, like I said, they put in, I know they've had one for 1997. I'm sure they've gotten a lot of use out of it. They've done great for it. My whole point is it's just a change in mindset for somebody. I can afford a new car whenever I want. I've told my wife I'm not going to buy a new car anymore. It just doesn't make sense for me to buy something, the things that I like, at this price tag that's here, when 2 years later, there's so much less.
I'm sorry,
So-
but for the confusion of my notes, are we talking about the water purchases now, or are we still on school?
No
Water.
Water,
Okay.
but
Or
anything
equipment
in
in
general,
general.
like if we're
General,
looking at like
Like
big
equipment, like the
equipment
scissor lift,
purchases.
yeah.
Even just if they're not big or whatever, just to have somebody just sort of toying around that there may be a better option. And maybe there isn't. Maybe it makes no sense.
So-
Like Peter's saying, maybe without a warranty or whatever the case is someone looking at that?
And I don't know what kind of rules and regulations towns have to follow that are different from you and I going out and buying,
Absolutely.
you
And
know?
if that's the case, then I can't change any of that. But if it's possible to look at it, hopefully somebody could. Because if we are buying something from 99 and it's 2018 and we're still using it, it's pretty good.
Yes.
So if we were to get it a year after or something like that and still be able to and save a good chunk in the beginning, it's a decent sort of investment, or at least idea if it's possible.
So I think a question for the town manager's office, town manager or the assistant town manager here tonight, so Sue can pass that on from us, is, I think to sum up what you're saying is there someone from the town who works with the departments to try to do larger purchases of that nature, of vehicles, of things, where we might be able to be more economic in the way that we purchase them.
That would be through the town manager's office, but I'll check
Yes.
with him.
So,
Thanks. And is that normal, by the way, to have that many articles? Obviously, I didn't do this,
for the
but
water-
that's a lot
for
to
the water
warrant.
depart- For the water department, yes.
So that's normal
For
for,
any other department, no, but for the
But-
water department.
again, excuse my ignorance, but why, right?
Because it-
We have a lot of things on a budget here, which, I mean, a budget is a budget.
So
It's-
it's, with the water department specifically, it goes to, what they're setting the rates at and not wanting to, so like we've talked about with the snow and ice removal budget, where there are rules where if you set the snow and ice removal budget at X,
Yeah.
the next year, the state requires you keep it at X or higher.
Yep.
So because that's something that we can go into deficit on, we keep it lower so that we don't force our hand in future years of spending certain amounts of money.
Sure.
With the water department, because they have the undesignated fund that their unspent money from the previous year goes into, and they keep a healthy balance in that fund, which I meant to ask Dan.
See, now that was, so that's like the key information, I guess, that maybe ties all this together,
So-
because I'm thinking,
Money.
we're,
He
we're,
just needs permission just to withdraw
so
money from.
it's-
his
exactly, so
account.
that makes a lot more sense, what you're saying, because in my brain, I'm like, well, if we're spending it, it's
So-
gonna be coming out of somewhere, so
Yes, so
it's
it's
not thin
coming
air.
from previous year's money that was paid in water receipts that we didn't spend in previous years.
Gotcha.
That went into the water undesignated fund.
I got you now.
I will reach out to Dan.
So it basically subsidizes our bill.
That, yes. And it's so that he can make sure that the rates stay at a lower rate that they are, so that we don't have to raise them
Yep.
based on, okay, we're gonna buy all of this stuff this year, but we might not buy that next year.
Sure.
We don't want you to have
Yep.
to pay it year after year.
I understand.
so.
Yeah, perfect. That would have been helpful to know that number, that, or at least that.
So I will reach out to Dan and get the balance number. I meant to ask him, and it slipped my mind while we were talking about the articles.
It's usually Barbara's job. She likes to
Yes,
ask that
that's true.
question.
You can shoot me an email, I have that information, I wrote it down already to check on it tomorrow, because as he was going over it, I was like, I've gotta check that.
You could send that to us, that would be great.
Just to backtrack for a second to what Renee was talking about. So the breakdown of what the all-day kindergarten was, there included 25,000 for miscellaneous costs, which was to buy what supplies that we need to start it. Could we then take that 25K as paying for the laptops and stuff? Would that be covered under the building?
No, because again, the laptops are considered more of a capital expense because the books would be considered specific, or whatever they're buying with the 25 would be considered specific to the kindergarten and to the curriculum.
But wouldn't
I
we-
would tell you, go to MSBA website, it'll give you a lot of information on all this. But again, we're buying a means of communication for the whole school with laptops, whereas what you're talking about are specific only to the kindergarten. And again, it's not a capital cost what you're talking about.
But we spent for desks and chairs that weren't for a specific, for a specific grade, they were for the school.
Right,
So, I mean, isn't it?
but it's not like you're
Couldn't we at
buying
least
Latin
look
books
into
or
that?
whatever.
I know it's a small amount, but if it makes it, whatever can make that number more palatable for the town meeting, you know, if we can do that, you know.
Yeah,
If those $25,000 in miscellaneous expenses are like coloring books or learning books, it's not specific to the school project, it's specific to teaching those
kindergarten,
specific
yes,
kids.
it's
exactly.
like, for example, last year.
So basically, everything has to be used at the new school that's bought.
it's more specific than that. Like last year, we spent, out of free cash, we spent $200,000 on
Textbooks.
textbooks and curriculum for the schools. There was not money that we could spend out of the school building fund. I don't know what all of the specific rules are, but I think it's certainly worth checking into what of any of the opening, like of the seed costs of the
Yeah.
kindergarten could potentially apply to that. So,
And is kindergarten definitely going?
well, we have not decided on that.
That's up to the town.
Yeah.
I thought
And
I thought I remembered hearing it was last week.
Our last meeting, what we decided, which was more just a sense of our meeting vote, was that we were in favor of it, but that will come down to our final vote on recommendation of the
I didn't know if
budget.
Rick said something like it was the police budget and they were doing 2 police in 19 and then yes, the kindergarten or something. I thought that's what he said last.
So it's,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
They've created a new budget we haven't seen.
Yeah, so there you go.
And that's the problem we have right now.
Yeah.
We're talking about something we don't
We
have.
got a summary, we didn't get.
Summary.
We didn't get a new budget like
We didn't get the whole
this.
thing.
We were supposed to get it this week, I thought.
Yeah, he told me just the summary. Yeah, he didn't tell me to update this one. That's
Okay.
why you guys don't have that there.
If we could get the full updated
Mm-hmm.
on email, that would be great.
It just seems like this year a lot's like being hidden and like there's not full disclosure. Am I the only one feeling that way, or I feel like it's just like we're having to hunt and peck, and maybe it's my
I think-
ignorance because I've been traveling a lot more and missing a
I
couple more
think the
meetings.
change
But
in the system where we don't have as good printout
Well, it
as
just seems
previous
like
years has made it
things are
more
hidden, and
difficult
then we
for
ask
us
questions
to-
and we push, and then it's like, oh no, you didn't have that. Oh no, it's actually right here in the budget, and so it just seems like it's we're just not maybe communicating
What kind of
well.
things are being hidden, though? I don't know.
Maybe we're just not communicating well, or maybe it's a
Right, well, like, it was like, I was
misunderstanding.
misunderstanding, like, last week when I was like, wait, all that money from, like, the school has already, like, been reappropriated, we never got, like, an update, or, you know what I
Right.
mean, like, from the South Shore VOTech, and I was like, wait, what do you mean it's already been,
So
which is
basically-
fine, it's not my job to do that, but I just thought it was weird
Is
that we
that-
have this whole
I-
budget, we go over it every week, and then it's like, oh, that money's been
So,
everywhere else, and I was
just
like, but I don't
for-
know if that's just how it goes, I just thought that
as
was weird.
quick to that, to both of you, the budget that we start out with in our binders is a working budget.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't get updated throughout the process, though. We usually just update the summary worksheet that.
Summary,
um,
and there are usually highlights of
Which Rick
like,
sent you a,
changes, and we haven't really been getting much in the way
Okay.
of
So
those-
basically,
those
a
highlights
couple
this
weeks
time.
ago, it was, before, right? It was, we don't know if we can fund the 2 things for the police and then the kindergarten. We literally came in the next week and somehow the VOTech budget came up different and that was getting, it sounds like kindergarten and the police, which is great. It's just, nobody really gave us, it was like you missed a meeting if you didn't miss one.
I
So-
haven't seen a change in the VOTech budget. Like, we put it initially 2% increase, and then they gave us something which probably more than 6 weeks ago was updated in the summary, not in the book.
Right.
And my impression that the VOTech budget's not paying for this kindergarten, it's free cash.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe it is, I could have, by the way, misunderstood something, but
So-
that's what it sounded like.
No, so as things come in clearer into picture, because when the budget that we start out with here, where we have the line by line, when we get that, there are a lot of things, spending for the year before, state money, the VOTEX assessment, things like that, that are not clear at all.
Health insurance.
Health insurance.
So-
As things get clearer and as the town manager gets more substantial numbers, more accurate numbers on those, he works with the financial team in town, Sue and various other people, and they work to keep updating the budget really on a week-by-week basis.
Sure.
We usually get occasional, like, frequent, but not every week updates on what the highlights of that are, and we'll get updates throughout this process of this is where we are as far as balanced.
Yep. But I'm not crazy though, right? Like,
No.
literally 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, VoTech,
Yeah, no, I was like, yeah.
that's the only reason that I'm
I
saying
haven't
it.
missed
I
one
mean, it could be
meeting.
6 weeks ago.
Town manager was talking about how some of where things were coming in, new growth was a little more than expected.
Yep.
The VOTEX budget was lower than expected. He was using those as parts of
I got you.
where they're working to balance to try to find, and we talked about with the police, possibly having half year with the
Yep.
detectives and looking at free cash for the kindergarten program, but not really being able to put the kindergarten program in the appropriated budget specifically, and not feeling comfortable for a full year for the detectives.
Yep.
Because of just overall where the budget stood. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we still have to worry about the salt.
Snow and ice, yeah,
Snow and ice, yes. Hopefully we're done.
hopefully.
Supposedly we're not. Wow.
I heard that's gonna be further north.
Oh, good.
Oh, thank God.
I hope that's correct. Hopefully it's nothing that needs to be bought.
Yeah, or something.
Or salted or sand
If we could get the most up-to-date
of that.
of that,
Okay.
that would be.
And that's part of the reason that that doesn't get updated is because there are so many moving parts, and I could be in there every day updating things that are changing. And I know you were asking about warrant articles, and they're not here. I have the warrant, but it's not official. There's a lot of requests in here, then we, as a finance team, have to try to decide which requests are
Going to stay.
on the front line and which are not. I don't know if you want to if you want to go over it, if you just want to wait for Rick to come back at another meeting, where we might have it more refined.
Be fine.
I think it makes more sense to be more refined.
Yeah,
Let's wait for more fun.
yeah,
I think.
all right.
Think so,
Yeah, I think that's one of the more frustrating things. Obviously, it has nothing to do with you, but when you look at stuff and then it changes constantly, it's difficult to,
And you don't have a.
it's not your
copy of it,
fault,
so then I
obviously,
just
it's
get
not
really
Rick's fault, it's
confused.
just,
Yeah.
it's,
Confusing
is what it is.
I was under the impression that you guys all at least got the summary of it so that you could see the summary changes.
At least I didn't see it, I may
I
not have
haven't.
seen it.
I've been
Matt
sending them
sent
out.
Yeah, no, I saw you.
Whenever we get them.
Well, we got one,
so
yeah.
We did get one.
Friday, but
Friday.
not before that.
We got one, I think, before that.
Hmm.
But it was probably.
We got one before we got the
Probably-
We
binder.
got one before we got the binder. I don't think
Yeah.
we've gotten anything.
One, the most recent one that you sent out.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, there was one in the binder as well,
Between, but
but I don't know if it was.
maybe the one in the binder is the one I'm thinking of,
Oh,
is the
okay.
in between. So. Other questions for Sue? Other questions in general before we move on to the bottom half of our agenda?
Do you have your next meeting date that I could
We
give
do
to
not,
Rick?
that's
Okay.
part of our lower half of the agenda,
All right.
so we'll talk about that in a moment. Liaison reports. Anyone? Okay. Correspondence, we have our copy of the Beacon. I am actually gonna keep it this week. You can all ask me for it if you are looking for it later. Minutes, we have minutes very diligently and expertly prepared by our secretary Deb, who had a lot to put in there from our last meeting with the school department. Did anyone have any motions, comments regarding the minutes, anything you found? Did we put 2018 on them?
We did.
All right. We've moved ahead 4 years. It's 2018. It's not 2014 anymore, so.
Motion to approve?
There a
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? No discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Those opposed? Abstaining? And the ayes have it.
Thank you.
So that brings us to our next meeting and our schedule moving forward. At this point, with department heads done, we're moving towards the nitty-gritty of heading towards a finalized budget and looking at the warrant articles, hopefully bringing in petitioners for any financial-related warrant articles to talk to us about them. Asking to Sue again, what do we expect the timeline to be for the refining of those? And do you know how close we are on the sort of the town manager finalized budget?
Probably get the finalized budget, hopefully by next week. He's back tomorrow, so I obviously will have discussions with him tomorrow regarding where we want to go, what's on there. Like you mentioned, you don't usually see the snow and ice deficit on the budget. Prior to your tenure, it was on the budget, and we put it there so that we could say, is it getting raised and appropriated, or are we covering it with free cash? The last 3-4 years, we've been covering it with free cash. This year, because the school full-day kindergarten, we're like, we can't take $800,000 for both of these things, so where do we put one of them? So we just plugged it in there just to see what it would do to the budget. And as for the warrant, Dory will be back on Monday, and I'm sure we're going to have a meeting at some point next week to look at all of these things and what we can fund and what we can't.
So,
What's the,
go ahead.
how many of the warrants or articles get funded? Maybe I just maybe use the wrong
That
words.
depends on
Yeah,
the
so-
votes,
so
the votes of the town.
The biggest part of it is the capital request. So
Yeah.
we have 1.1 in free cash. We're using 450 for the school.
Yep.
And we're possibly using another 450 for the snow and ice. Or do we split the snow and ice with raising it on the recap if there's room in the budget with the new numbers that come in for healthcare? You know, so those are these
Sure.
other moving targets that we don't know until
Yep.
other things come in. But there's definitely not enough free cash to cover all this capital request.
Right.
So those key items first, how we're handling them, and then then we'll see what we have left to do for capital items. So.
But do they normally mostly get funded? Is it something where it's like,
So,
there's
yeah.
years where nothing gets funded?
There are years where nothing gets funded. Those are usually for economic years
Yep.
for the country in general, and
Sure.
as well as the town. There are years where everything gets funded, but that typically is because the town is usually pretty good about not asking for too much. But it does, all of these will go to the floor at town meeting and be voted on by the people who attend town meeting. So they could get funded, they could not get funded. It would be up to
So
how the room.
people in town meeting do that,
Yes.
and
We
they could
provide-
approve all of them and
we
go
provide
over.
recommendations on them.
Yep.
A lot of time, our recommendations do carry weight at town meeting if we say, no, don't fund this. Not a guarantee, but there's a good chance that it won't get funded.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
So if we think that next week we will have a final budget to discuss, I would think next week meeting again, especially as we're just a little over a month away from town meeting, would be wise, and then expecting warrant articles probably the week after that. So I think the next 2 weeks at least plan on meetings, so our next meeting will be on the 25th. It's likely after that, it'll be May 2nd, so. or-
It's the second, it's a Wednesday.
Yep,
Sorry.
so. Anyone have anything else to discuss?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
There a motion and a second, is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, abstaining, we are adjourned, thank you all.
Would you say we're meeting next Monday?
Yes.